This is Spacecoast Business, spotlighting East Central Florida's business community. This week's guest, Florida State Senator Mike Haridopolos. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pearsall.
Hello, I'm Jeff Pearsall, and welcome to the Spacecoast Business Show, where we share best business practices every week and the pressing business issues that affect you in the Brevard County area and throughout the state of Florida. This evening, I'm reminded of a statement from Confucius. He said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And tonight, we're going to press on to make that single step, and I'm very pleased to have with us the Honorable Senator Mike Haridopolos, who is actually the Senate Chair of the Finance and Tax Committee and also the Majority Whip. And Senator Mike, it's just a pleasure to have you here with us this evening. I want to get started immediately on the issue of property tax because it's affecting so many of us throughout, not just Brevard County, but the state. And why don't you kind of just get started with the general concepts behind this issue?
Sure, Jeff. First, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be on. The issue is pretty clear. We have a major spending problem in the state of Florida. Over the last 6 years, you've seen property tax revenues grow 3 times faster than family income. And we're seeing the end result of it today. A lagging real estate market, a slowing economy. The problem has been that government has spent too much money, and it's through the property taxes. We wanted to step in, be aggressive, and try to provide some not just short-term, but long-term relief to help revive our market and to bring some common sense back to government spending and making sure that everyday consumers have the resources they need to make sure that their needs are met.
Well, Senator Haridopolos, there's been a lot that's been going on in this issue, and when you talk about almost triple spending in relationship to overall personal income growth, that's pretty much just in the last 5 to 6 years, isn't that correct?
Exactly. That's what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years. We've enjoyed the real estate boom for a period of time. People saw a lot of their values go up. Now, of course, we're going through a much more difficult time. And what we saw is that on the property tax issue, that is where the local governments get their money. We on the state level derive our income through the sales tax.
Right.
The property tax revenues were going just out of control, and we needed to put a cap on it. And we wanted to talk to taxpayers across our state, making sure we got their input. If we get enough input from elected officials, we want to hear from everyday business owners and, most importantly, homeowners who are feeling the crunch of higher and higher taxes.
Now, what actually led to this to cause this transition from years and years of basically remaining in balance to all of a sudden from 2000 to 2006 seeing these astronomical numbers, and they are really staggering numbers?
Well, they truly are staggering. I mean, here in Brevard County alone, you saw the revenues increase through property taxes, 88% in the last 5 years to local government. Needless to say, they did not have a revenue problem. When they got the money, they did what most politicians do. They spent that money. What you need to do in general is just deprive politicians of the money so that you have more of your own. And so we did, even though it's, again, not our source of revenue, the state derives its money through the sales tax, we had, as some people call it, an intervention. We wanted to move in, put some caps on revenues so that taxpayers can have some breathing room.
Right.
Yes, we all enjoy the run-up in real estate market if you're able to sell your home in that time period, but now we're seeing the end result. And that end result is clear, and that is why we want to give voters the opportunity on the 29th of January to cut property taxes, to put some long-term reforms in place, and try to move us in a direction so that we can all enjoy a rising economy, not just the government.
Great. Before we get to the 29th and that particular proposal that's available for the voters, has there been much that's been done so far that's led up to this reform?
Well, we wanted to do some first steps. Remember, as we talked about earlier, we went to the voters. We had 15 town hall meetings across the state. We didn't hear from tax makers. We heard from taxpayers. And what they told us was a couple things. They want to see government on a diet, and they want to make sure the government recognizes there is a difference between what you want and what you can afford. Families and businesses make those decisions every day, and we wanted to do the same thing. So what has already been done is this. We have placed our law change that has been put in place is that we put a cap on property tax revenues. Counties, cities, local taxing districts like your water management districts can no longer grow their revenues faster than family income, which is usually between 4 and 5% a year. And what we've seen since we passed that law is a real result. Had we not acted, going back now to June, your taxes, meaning all of us, our taxes would have been $2.5 billion $2.5 billion higher than they are currently. What we did basically is stop the bleeding, and we're hopeful that on the 29th of January we'll have the opportunity to grow those tax savings, especially if you choose to move.
Now, with those tax savings that are proposed, there's a chart that we're actually showing to our listeners. And, you know, from 2000 to 2007, there's just been this astronomical growth that's been going on. But the effects of this January 9th constitutional amendment actually will create a negative 2.9% in the 2008 property taxes. Why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. As you see with the graph, what you've seen is that over the last, really since 2001, you've seen 9, 10, 12, 15, 18% property tax revenue increases for local government. With that last number you see is for the first time with the changes we made in June, a reduction in overall revenues through property taxes. So the actual number actually went down for the first time. And if we pass, as you said, on the 29th, this constitutional amendment, it will go down even further.
So this negative 2.9 is already from the short-term effects then?
Exactly. That's the short-term. We want long-term effects.
That's
we want to
correct.
have that reduction in overall revenues to help everyone, not just a select class.
So now when the voters go to the ballots on January 29th, they're actually going to see one amendment that is written up, and it's a constitutional amendment. And before we go into the parts of that amendment, why don't you speak to the importance of making this a constitutional amendment?
Well, the key with the constitutional amendment is locking it in the Constitution, not just short-term where you can change it by the legislative act year by year. This locks it in where the only way you can change it in the future is by the vote of the people. A constitutional amendment is a very high threshold, and we even raised that threshold higher. A way that a constitutional amendment gets on the ballot is you must have 3/5 of the legislature approving a measure, and then the voters would also do the same, meaning 60% of the voters must say yes to a constitutional amendment. It's a higher threshold. We think it's a good idea to have a high threshold because you're making a permanent change here, not just a year-by-year change, and we're hopeful that this will really turn around things with our real estate market and our overall economy as well.
So, in theory, then, when this is done by the voters, and I'm going to take the positive approach, and we have more than 60% that approve it, then for this to ever get reversed again out of the position of a constitutional amendment, it would actually have to get 3/5 of the legislature to approve it, to put it out there for the ballot, and then more than 60% of the voters would have to vote against it again.
Exactly. You'd have to have a pretty diametric change. This is why we want to put these tax protections in place. Again, looking out for the taxpayer first instead of the government first. This is what our country is all about. And by having that 60% threshold, we're hopeful that by locking in these tax savings, there'll be some certainty in the marketplace, which currently does not exist.
Now, as I understand it, there's 4 significant parts of this new constitutional amendment. Let's take each one of those one at a time so that the viewing audience can actually begin to learn and understand. And I have to say that you take a complex issue and make it very simple. So it's very appreciative that you're here to share these. And the first one is the homestead exemption. And there's a lot that's been said about homestead exemption. And I think many of us, you know, we just kind of move into a new home and it's like we're going to sign off and we got homestead. But there's a lot more to that. And this amendment is making some significant changes.
Absolutely. Let's look at the first part. We're going to double the homestead. Currently it's at $25,000. It's been in place since the 1980s. And adjusted for inflation, it should be much higher.
Right.
And so by doubling the homestead to now $50,000, it's going to help every homesteaded property. It keeps up with inflation. We think it's a common sense measure. And it's one where, again, you're helping everyone across the board who have a homesteaded property. And we're hopeful that these tax savings are for people not just to own their home currently, but if they move, they'll also enjoy even more significant savings.
Now, that homestead exemption of being doubled to $50,000, that's a one-time doubling, or is that something that's going to happen again? Is it adjusted again in the future? As you said, this has been in effect since the 80s.
Well, this has been in effect since the 80s, and it's one where when we double the homestead to $50,000, it affects you and your current property. So you'll get an extra $25,000 exemption. And then if you move, you'll also, again, keep that, in this case, a $50,000 exemption the first day you purchase your property. In addition, also to keep this in context, we have Saver Homes today, which has saved so many of us. We've not felt that tax increase because we have that 3% cap. No matter what happens with this vote, you keep Save Our Homes. Some of the opponents are saying Save Our Homes go away. That's exactly false. Don't follow that. Save Our Home stays as is, and that's been one of the great protections for all homeowners across our state.
Okay, good. Now, the second one, it almost links to the homestead exemption, which has been a major problem, is that people that are in existing homes that want to relocate within a community, which has really been kind of one thing is the American dream of owning a home. The next one is being able to upgrade and move, you might say, within that community as you continue to progress through your career. And it's caught in a catchphrase called portability. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what does the portability clause of this amendment mean?
Well, portability is huge because people feel locked in their homes. They know if they want to upsize it as a growing family or they want to downsize their empty nesters that their taxes will go up significantly, 200, 300, 400%. And it's a really unfortunate situation. And we want people to live where they want to live, not based on a failed government policy. And so at portability, we have twofold. One is you have a Save Our Homes benefit built up. If you've been in your home for 5 or 6 years here in Brevard, you might have built up $200,000-$300,000 in portability. And meaning that the difference between what your just value is, what the property appraiser says your home is worth, versus what you pay in taxes. So you have that credit built up. With portability, you're allowed to bring that credit with you when you purchase a new house. So let's make an easy example. Let's say right now you've built up $200,000 in credit. If you move to, let's say, a $700,000 house, you buy a beachside home.
Right.
Instead of being taxed at $700,000 worth of value, you'll only be taxed at $500,000 worth of value. And to make it perfectly clear, when you're taxed at that new rate, you lock immediately back into Save Our Home, so you know that your assessment will not go up more than 3% a year. That protection's in place. So portability is just about taking your tax savings with you. And then on the second side, Jeff, the idea where portability is also when you downsize. Instead of taking the whole amount, you're not going to go completely off the tax rolls. It's not that good a deal. Okay.
I was going to say, build up the credit and be able to have it a zero tax base.
Life
right?
is not that perfect, but what you can do is whatever percentage of savings you're enjoying now at Save Our Homes, you'll be able to enjoy that percentage when you downsize. So right now, if you're in a larger home, let's say again a beachside home at $700,000, and you buy a $300,000 condo, but you're saving 25% because of Save Our Homes, guess what? You get 25% off your new tax bill. We think that's a fair way of doing business, and it helps everyone because what we need in this marketplace are more transactions. Right now, ask any realtor, it's a dead market.
Right.
So we think that the portability measure will put some more, let's just say, transactions in place, and that benefits everyone because people will live where they want to live, not, again, based on a failed tax policy.
Well, I know for sure that even personally, we ran across this issue just about 2 years ago when we were ready to change and look at a different community because my first daughter had moved off to college, and it's like it's time, and we just couldn't do it because of this exact same issue. And I know a lot of people may be viewing this and saying, well, the realtors have had it great. Real estate's been great. They don't need it to be great any longer. Well, the fact is that in Florida, probably our single greatest asset is real estate, isn't it? And when that market begins to suffer, the economy of all the different subsidiaries of that begin to suffer, and it reaches all of us.
Well, that's an excellent point. When you talk about the domino effect, the domino effect is absolutely clear. When you purchase a new home, you're going to get that new TV. You're going to put a new carpet, maybe put in wallpaper or paint, and that has a residual effect on our economy. When we have a slowdown in housing sales, the reality is we all suffer. And so it's not just real estate agents or mortgage brokers. It's the people who make the housing industry work. And that's the difficulty we're running into right now.
Yeah. So the first two, homestead exemption, portability. The third one really begins to start addressing some of the business issues as it relates to the property tax issue, and that is the tangible property tax. What will that exemption basically mean to businesses?
Sure. Well, most people are not familiar with the Tangible Personal Property Tax, or TPP. What it is that for simply owning items with your business, it could be a computer, it could be your desk, it could be your filing cabinets, you're actually taxed on those. And so what we're trying to do with the Tangible Personal Property Tax is put an exemption in of $25,000. If you put a $25,000 exemption on tangible personal property taxes, what it will do is of the 1.3 million businesses that currently pay this tax, 1.1 of the 1.3 million businesses will no longer have to pay this tax. And what's so silly
about it... So you're down to only 200,000 businesses?
That's the great thing about it, because most businesses are small. And when you have a $25,000 exemption, they don't even qualify because the desk and the computer aren't going to add up to $25,000. And what it also helps is when you talk to a small business owner, they're going to tell you that they pay more to their accountant to figure out what they owe than what they actually owe in taxes.
I can believe that.
What kind of sense does that make? So by having this $25,000 exemption, 11 out of 13 businesses are off the books. They can focus on making their customers happy, not the government.
But it also creates capital that is being spent in the economy, because now you're looking at those 1.1 million companies, and basically they've got $25,000 that they know that they can make in capital improvements into their business and not have to worry about really a tax bill at the end of the year that's a total surprise to them.
Well, that's a great point. And it's a dynamic that a lot of people miss about tax cuts. When you cut taxes, you put more money into the economy, and that helps all of us. I mean, that's what's going to drive the economy. The government does not create jobs. The entrepreneur creates jobs. What we can try to do as a government is to give incentives. And I think as you made the excellent analysis, by having this incentive in place, we all win. And we're going to have a stronger economy, or if nothing else, we can pass along the cost in a lower sense for a change along to consumers.
Okay. Now, there's also the business cap issue. What is that issue meaning to businesses and the opportunity to have those exemptions that are going to be really quite significant to this whole property tax amendment?
Well, businesses felt the brunt more than anyone.